That was just a sorry display from the Kings. I thought that maybe this would be the time where things would be different. And what do? The Kings go and blow a 22-point third quarter lead. After blowing a 30-point third quarter lead in Chicago and barely coming away with that win, they now do the exact same thing except don't come away with the win in this one. The Kings, they had the players only meeting before the game in Minnesota, and they came out with the big win. And I wasn't able to talk about it after that game because I recorded before the news about the players only meeting came out. But what I would have said is that this is a great win, but it doesn't mean anything about that players only meeting unless we then can build upon it and don't lose the next games that we should win at home. And, even if they would have won this game, there still would have been a lot to prove. But I'm glad that we just get the answer right away. We don't need to wait any longer. Nothing has changed. And that's just really frustrating. To lose to the Bulls when you have a 22-point third quarter lead in the fashion that they did, just absolutely crumbling down the stretch, was just sad. To go into the fourth quarter with a 14-point lead and then get outscored 36-18. They doubled our score in the fourth quarter. And the thing is, that just feels normal for this Kings team. The late game execution on both ends was just awful. But the Kings had multiple opportunities to really put this game away. And each time they failed. One of those times was when they went up 22 points. But then even at the start of the fourth quarter, they had a 14-point lead going into the fourth quarter. They absolutely could have put it away. Or when they have even just a double-digit lead in the middle of the fourth quarter, they should be able to put this game away. And it's just these dumb plays. It's like the Kings just forget how to play basketball, like the fundamentals of basketball. When they get these leads, they cannot hold leads. It's just so frustrating to watch them play down to their competition time after time after time. This was the Kings' chance to separate themselves and to really cement themselves into the top six. They play, and they still can. They play so many home games. They have an easier schedule. They survived the really tough part of their schedule, the road, heavy, playing tough teams part of the schedule. But to not be able to take advantage of this is just an ongoing issue, even from last year, of not taking advantage of home court. And then more of an issue from this year of just blowing these massive leads. When the Kings got up 22 points in the third quarter, things just got super chaotic. Again, it's like they just totally forget how to play basketball. It's like there's guys dropping the ball under the rim, missing wide open layups, missing wide open threes, not getting back on defense. There's just like these wild rotations, guys jumping out at 3-point shooters. Like everything just got so chaotic, and that's just how it happens with the Kings, where that's why they allow these other teams to go on big runs and be able to come back, because they don't know how to calm things down in those moments. And then speaking of not knowing how to calm things down, you just have the late game execution. Like, yes, Sabonis fouled out, and well, that was a problem because the Kings off a made basket didn't get back on defense, or well, they did, but they didn't get set, and Fox gambles for a steal, just so stupid, and leaves Sabonis out to dry under the basket. And then you're asking Sabonis to make a decision of whether you try to contest and maybe pick up that foul, or do you just let him get the wide open layup? And so Sabonis, decided to contest, and he fouled out. But that's on Fox. Like, you cannot gamble for that steal in that situation. It's just that type of decision making. And then obviously you have Fox inbounding with 36 seconds to go with a timeout and just throws it out of bounds. I mean, I was just yelling at him to take a timeout. And then you have them getting the stop, not securing the rebound, and then for some reason not fouling. Just letting the Bulls dribble the clock out. 10 whole seconds or more, like 11 seconds of the clock, to dribble it out for no reason. And then DeRozan goes to the line with 3.5 seconds left and makes them both. And there were other plays down the stretch. I mean, turnovers were a massive problem, as they are many times against these teams that we should beat, where you have just this awful possession where Fox is dribbling around in the perimeter and then passes it to Lyles. And then Lyles hands it back off. And then Fox dribbles around a little more and then passes it back out to Lyles. And then Lyles drives and just throws it straight to a defender. Like nothing happening on the whole possession. And I think some of that probably has to do with Sabonis fouling out and the Kings not knowing how to play without him. But also, we've seen poor decision making like that even with him late in games at times. It sucks because I had so much hope going into this game of like this was going to be the turning point, and then it just immediately we get our answer of it was not the turning point. And the thing is, the Kings didn't just blow a 22-point lead, they also built a lead in the first quarter and then blew that in an instant. And so it's just about this team, it's a game of runs, especially for this team who just cannot defend for portions of a game. For some portions of the game, they absolutely can defend, like in the first quarter and especially the second half of the first quarter, where they went on a 17-1 run to end that quarter, and they were playing really well defensively. Our bench dominated their bench, as they should. And then you just have the second quarter where the Kings start missing some shots. You have like Lyles sitting in the corner missing threes, but then inexplicably, you have the Bulls running it back the other way, creating these mismatches, but then allowing Kobe White to go one-on-one with Harrison Barnes twice. You have Ayo Dosunmu, who's just getting to the rim way too easily. The first play of the game, Ayo Dosunmu just ran straight by Kevin Huerter to get a right-handed layup. And then the first play of the second half, the exact same thing happens. Ayo Dosunmu runs right by Kevin Huerter and gets a layup. And there were ways that the Kings could have easily won this game, like if Sabonis can just, make a shot around the rim, or if Lyles could make a wide open corner 3-point shot or something like that. But I just feel like those type of things are things that just sometimes happen, right? Sometimes Sabonis is going to have a bad finishing game. Sometimes Lyles isn't going to knock down his threes. Sometimes Malik Monk is just going to miss some shots. But then on the other hand, you have Fox, who was having an efficient scoring night, and you have other guys who are, making some shots, and you're going up against a Bulls team that you should be able to defend really well. And they did a really good job on DeRozan in the first half, and they should have been able to easily win despite some guys having off nights like Domas. And it comes back to the statistics about how when the Kings score less than 115 points, they rarely win games. They scored 109 in this game to the Bulls 113. And if they even had a really below average scoring fourth quarter, they still could have got to 115, but instead they had a really, really, really below average scoring fourth quarter with 18. But again, that's not really the problem for me. Sure, the offense should have been better, but the defense in the fourth quarter was not good. But also it's about the first three quarters. This game should have been long over going into the fourth quarter. That's what should have happened. The Kings should have stepped on the Bulls' throats and just blown them out. And the thing is, the Kings' next game is in LA against the Lakers, and I'm sure they're just going to come out and win that game, and just, we'll all be happy after that game, right? Because that's what happens. And it's just the highs are very high with this team because they win against the good teams, but the lows are just so low. And the thing is, a lot of times I'm prepared for losses against bad teams, but coming into this game, I had talked myself into how, no, this is going to be the turning point. And the thing is, if I were to go through each individual Kings player, I don't even feel like anybody had like an awful game. Like Sabonis had a bad game, but it wasn't like, kind of like I said, it wasn't so awful that we should be losing. And then it's like, oh, Barnes was fine, Keegan was fine, Fox was good, Herter, had some struggles early and then picked it up. Lyles had some struggles shooting the ball, but was overall pretty good. Len was solid, Davion, Monk, Duarte, like everyone's fine. It's just this entire team thing of when they get a big lead, they just start playing a different way, and the defensive intensity just totally drops. And the thing is, this Kings team, like, they want to play with pace, right? They want to play a fast-paced game, and the Bulls probably don't, especially when DeMar is on the court. When he's off the court, maybe it changes a little bit, especially with, Kobe White, I would assume, Alex Caruso, guys like that. But there's a difference between playing with that tempo and playing with meaningful pace versus just kind of being chaotic and not getting back on defense. And that's what it turned into for the Kings, especially with the bench unit in the third quarter. I feel like it really happened when, well, it was a little before, but Duarte got that tech because he got fouled by Drummond and they didn't call it. And then that's when the Kings just started chucking some 3-point shots that they shouldn't have been. And that's the thing, like the end of the first quarter, the Kings were shooting 37% from three, right? So pretty average, but they still had a big lead. They had a 14-point lead after the first quarter. They weren't necessarily, killing them with the three ball. And so that was good to see. Like, you don't need to be just bombing from three to be able to get a lead like that. But then I think it's just with that bench unit, they just started playing so fast and just chucking up these threes that we just don't need to be shooting. And that just took everyone out of the flow of the game. DeMar DeRozan was incredible in the fourth quarter. He was hitting tough shot after tough shot, but him taking over for a small portion of the game, that is exactly why the Kings needed to take advantage of when he didn't have it going. And they especially needed to take advantage of the time where Kobe White was the only offensive player on the floor for the Bulls. The Bulls were just running a totally defense plus Kobe White lineup. And the Kings just continued to leave Kobe White. For me, like the first half, it wasn't great, especially with that big lead in the first. But first halves are their first halves. You're probably not going to win or lose the game in the first half unless you're the Celtics against the Warriors. So we come out of the first half with a 7-point lead. That's fine. And then they come out in the third quarter and they play really well and get that lead. And so up to that point, everything's just fine. And then it's just when they hit that magic number of 20, it's 20 every time, or like right around there, 22 this time, is when they just totally let off the gas. I just don't understand how it's the same, it's the same score every single game. And it just felt like the Kings let both Kobe White and DeMar DeRozan go for too long without making adjustments. And the DeMar DeRozan one, less so. But with Kobe White, when he is the only offensive player on the floor for the Bulls, you can't let him just constantly get mismatches. Just throw bodies at him and make someone else beat you. Alex Caruso is out there 1 for 10, 0 for 6 from 3. You have Javon Carter, who just looked awful with his offensive decision making. You have Andre Drummond. It's like, what is he going to do anywhere outside of 2 feet? And then you have, Bitim, the new guy from the G League or whatever that just got a contract, and Julian Phillips. Like, you got to make those guys beat you. The Bulls had 11 points off of their bench. The Kings had 38, and they still lost this game. The Kings also out-rebounded the Bulls 51-32. 20 offensive rebounds for the Kings to 7 for the Bulls. You have Sabonis, a lot of them were off his own misses because he could not finish. But he had 10 offensive rebounds. And he had an awful first half. He, couldn't get anything to go. Couldn't finish over Vooch. And his playmaking was being impacted because he kind of started to force it at one point and he was turning the ball over. But then it was nice in the second half how Fox was able to take on more of ball handling responsibilities, and then he was able to get Sabonis easier looks inside. And so I really liked how they did that. I thought Fox for most of the game, like the first 3 quarters, played really, really well. His playmaking was so good. He had 10 assists, and he could have had more if his teammates didn't sell some of his assists. And he was scoring efficiently. It felt like he was scoring when the Kings needed him to. But then the fourth quarter came, and fourth quarter Fox did not get activated at all, which was disappointing. And I think he just struggled, and the Kings as a whole just struggled offensively when they didn't have a true center out there. Like Lyles at the 5, Lyles, he didn't shoot well, but he did have a good game. Like he was rebounding well. I thought he was making pretty good decisions with the ball. But when the Kings just don't have that guy that's just going to come and set the hard screen for their guards, whether it be Fox or Monk, the offense just doesn't look the same at all. And you could tell in the fourth quarter, Lyles, he was pretty open. Like whether it was Drummond or Vooch, like they were backing off of him, and Lyles didn't even look at the rim, and because he was just deferring to Fox. He's like, I'm not going to take this shot. I haven't been shooting well. This is Fox's time, right? And so it just kind of clogged up the offense because he's not the big 5 that's setting the screen and rolling, but he's also not shooting the 3, so he's not spacing out the floor. And so you would think the problem with going with Lyles at the 5 would be the rebounding, would be Drummond, especially, but also Vucevic when he got into the game later. But that really, the defensive side of the ball wasn't really the problem. Although there were 2 key offensive rebounds that they didn't get. Although if Sabonis is in the game for the second one, I doubt they get that one anyways. And Sabonis being in foul trouble the entire game, when I looked, like he picked up his second foul on a moving screen. I was surprised he had 2 fouls because the first one I thought was on Keegan. But I guess not. But Keegan was in his own foul trouble anyways. He had 5 fouls. Didn't really impact his minutes though. But despite the fouls, I thought Keegan did good defensively, especially when he was on DeRozan. And I thought there were periods where the Kings were super active defensively, especially Fox getting his hands on balls when the Bulls would drive to the basket. And so again, it's just like 4 periods when the Kings were able to set up and play that half-court defense, they were good. But then in other periods, it was either the transition for the Bulls that was getting them easy buckets, or it was just some easy blow-bys by Ayo Dosunmu. Like it felt like Dosunmu didn't really have to work for anything that he got. Herter had a horrible first half. Like he looked awful offensively, couldn't get anything going in the floater area, was turning the ball over, wasn't defending well. He turned it around in the second half, had those back-to-back threes, which were big, but he was definitely a victim of the blow-by a few times. You had Barnes getting the DeRozan matchup because of the physicality, and I mean, I thought he did pretty well. He stripped him at one point, and he was keeping him in front of him, forcing him into those tough fadeaway jumpers, and DeMar was just making them late in this game. And the Kings shot well from the free throw line in this game, 16 for 18, but then had a crucial miss down the stretch from Barnes, which is just like, of course, like we're shooting well all game, and then we miss one down the stretch. Like the only other one that we missed was Fox, and we still retained possession after the miss, so it didn't really feel that bad. It's like, of course, even when we have a good free throw shooting game, we miss one in the clutch. It just seems like the Kings, when they have leads going into clutch time, I have less confidence in them to pull out the win than when they are behind. Because it seems like when they're behind, they're going to lock in on defense, and they're going to continue to run their offense the way that they've been running it the rest of the game. When they have the lead, the defense just collapses. Like, I don't get it. I don't know if it's like when the Kings get a 20-point lead, they feel like as long as they're scoring on the other end, it's like, what's the point of really, giving it all defensively, because we're just going to retain this lead by outscoring them because we have this 20-point lead. That's sure what it feels like, because they absolutely had a chance to blow them out and they just couldn't get a stop to end that third quarter. Kobe White just kept them in the game because the third quarter, like the passing, the ball movement, it was for the Kings was really good in the third quarter. You had that play where Sabonis would go and slip the screen, Herter would set the screen, you have Fox coming around, and so he's rifling a pass from left to right, so he has his left hand, and either Sabonis is going to be open in the middle of the paint or the corner is going to be open. That was a really nice play that they ran a few times, and they were getting Sabonis easy dunks. They were getting, Fox was finding open shooters time after time. The offense was just, it was great in that third quarter. And, I expected some drop off when the bench came in because, that makes sense. But the problem is that it wasn't just that they were missing shots and not running the offense as cleanly and not getting as many good looks. It's that was then turning into just easy look after easy look for the Bulls, to the point where, because Kobe White was keeping them around the 20-point mark while the Kings offense was going on one end, then when the Kings offense stopped, all of a sudden, boom, they're back to within 14. The Kings went zone a couple of times. They went to like a 3-2 zone, and really what they were trying to do was to force Vooch to be the playmaker within the middle of that zone. And anytime, other than early on when Vooch hit a couple threes, anytime the ball hit his hands, good things were happening for the Kings. Like he was, not making good decisions, and he was going to his jump hook, which was defended really well by Len and Sabonis. And so the Kings were trying to, force Vooch to be the main guy. And so that worked well. Like I thought Len had a really solid game inside, protecting the paint and then setting solid screens on the other end. You had Davion come in and he knocked down 3 middies and looked really confident. You had Monk, who had a, not a great shooting game, but still provided offense with 11 and 6. And then Duarte came in, and I thought his physicality on DeRozan was really good. And then he was knocking down his three, and he made a really nice move to kind of bail the Kings out of a bad offensive possession when he hit a midi. But it was just when that bench unit didn't have Domas because of the foul trouble and Fox out there. Sure, Davion hits a few middies, but they needed more than that. I just think the Kings get into these grooves defensively when they're able to defend in the half court, and they're hitting their rotations. They're, able to stay in front of their man relatively well. But it's just those moments where they allow the other team to get out in transition. It just feels like once that happens, everything kind of falls apart, and the desperation to either get a stop or a score kind of sets in, and it hurts both the offense and the defense. I mentioned it before, but the next game is in LA against the Lakers. That's a big game because the Lakers are trying to chase us down, and we're going to need Sabonis to be better, finishing around the rim for sure. But this is just one of those games where, it seems like the Kings will probably turn up because it's a game against the Lakers. It's a road game. Like, it's an important game. It just feels so easy to say, well, if the Kings just play like they did in the first quarter or the second half of the first quarter, the first half of the third quarter, then boom, they'll win. But they just absolutely cannot find that consistency. The Kings did win the first 2 games against the Lakers, and one of those was in LA, one of those was in Sacramento. Right now, the Lakers have matched the Kings in the win column, but have 3 more losses. But, obviously we want Sabonis to play better. Other than that, there's not really individuals that we want to play better. Like, sure, Keegan, hit some more shots. But other than that, it's a collective thing, which is why I was just hoping that this, players only meeting, that could be the turning point. Just doesn't seem to be the case. The Kings, they've had rotational players playing better recently. Like Davion was good, Duarte was good. We're not even playing Keon because Davion and Duarte were both playing well. And so to still not come away with wins, it's rough. Also, I didn't really mention it, but Alex Caruso, despite being awful offensively and looking like he kind of lost his confidence, he was just a menace defensively, especially in the first half. The Kings just kept dribbling into him or passing near him, and I was just like, just avoid the dude entirely. He was just getting his hands on everything. It was very annoying. I want that dude on the Kings. But anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. I will see you guys next time to recap the game against the Los Angeles Lakers. Peace.